Niners and Chiefs. We will sneak in some Warriors talk after Splash Cousin Jordan Elliott leaves us. Staff writer at Niners Nation breaks it down with the all-22 stuff. He's really good at it, and he'll break down the Niners. How can they win against the Kansas City Chiefs? But first, business is business. Jordan, good morning. How the hell did you become a Dodger fan? I thought you was from San Jose.
Oh, I'm not a Dodgers fan.
Oh, that's...
I was probably joking around on Twitter. If you saw something, that's probably just a joke on Twitter. I'm a Dodgers fan, so it's always kind of a running joke. I'm a Giants fan through and through. It's just kind of, Yeah.
Bad intel from our producer, Sam Lubman. He said, jab him about the Dodgers for losing in 4 to the San Diego Padres.
Well, I was probably one of those people then who fell for his little joke there then.
Yeah, you fell for the okie doke. I figured he wasn't a Dodger fan. I was like, that can't be Splash Cousin. Come on now. Before we get to the game, are you excited to see Harbaugh back at Levi's Stadium?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the symbolism behind that is really special. The fact that, if you would have told me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that he'd even step foot in Santa Clara, let alone in the stadium for some kind of ceremony with the team. So I think it's nice that it appears that they're all kind of burying the hatchet. So I think that's going to be a very special moment.
If you could take one trait or one thing that Harbaugh did well and inject it into Kyle Shanahan, what would that be?
Just like the public display of passion and like that fire and intensity you saw from Jim Harbaugh. I don't know what Kyle does behind the scenes. Maybe he does have a bit of him in that we don't see. But the way, that way that Jim would, bang on Alex Smith's shoulder pads and kind of really fire him up on the sidelines before the game and just, yelling at the referees, all that fire and intensity that he had is kind of the one thing that I feel like Kyle has been lacking in the 6 years he has been coach. And I feel like if he did have that, he'd be unstoppable. So maybe they can have a little bit of time to talk, and maybe some of that rubs off on him this weekend. We'll see.
Jordan, a lot of our roasters have been saying the same thing as we're talking to Jordan Elliott, staff writer at Niners Nation. Does a great job breaking down the 49ers film. Check out his Twitter page at @Splash_Cousin. That's one thing that I wanted. I want passion on the sidelines. Shanahan just sometimes looks stoic, and his team plays like it too, like a blend of football on offense, a brand of football that's bland, especially in that fourth quarter when they go 8 minutes and 42 seconds, go 80 yards and not score. But one thing at the Super Bowl 54 that was talked about, Jordan, was that George Kittle was the best tight end in football. And since that Super Bowl, Kelsey has put on a clinic in 37 regular season games, nearly 3,000 yards receiving, 27 touchdowns. George Kittle has 15 career touchdowns. So how do the Niners implement George Kittle? I know he had a good game against Atlanta, but we want to see touchdowns. We want to see those tone-setting plays, and it feels like we haven't seen that this season with George Kittle.
Yeah, I don't know how much of it, Bonte, is due to, them kind of ramping him back up due to injury, and some of it I know has to do with the way that he is prioritized by opposing defenses. They want to take him out of the 49ers game plan. But the numbers do back up exactly what you're saying. Like, his yards per route run is at 1.53 right now. It's the lowest it's been since his rookie year in 2017. Wow. His average depth of target is 5.2 yards right now, which is the lowest that it's ever been.
Wow.
So they need to find a way to get him involved more. The encouraging sign is that his targets have increased every week, and they nearly doubled from 5 in Carolina to 9 last week in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So I do think things are trending up, but I also do think that some of that had to do with the fact that they were down double digits a lot of that game, and they were throwing more than they usually would. So while it would be nice to see the targets go up, it would be better to just see him used more efficiently, and I think that they do have to find a way to get him the ball. He's just too important to what they do. I know it doesn't show up in the stat sheet. He has been doing some good things, run blocking, which is where the argument for him being the best tight end usually falls on, because I don't think you could even come close to arguing the receiving end of things with what Kelsey has done, but I agree. They need to make a more conscious effort to try to get him involved early on and get some rhythm going there.
You've done a really good job going back over the years and looking at Shanahan and Garoppolo and contrasting plays and what they're doing well and what they're not doing well over the years. When you look at the offense as a whole right now, why are they not scoring as much points as they have in years past?
I think it's honestly just they haven't been on the same page for a full 60 minutes, and it feels like every week when one position group starts to pick it up, another drops the ball, and, literally and figuratively after last week. And it feels like they just haven't really had that full, complete performance yet. And early on, you can kind of look past that and feel confident about moving forward. But as you're getting into week 7, week 8, like, you can't have those kind of performances. And it just felt like, that game in Denver, Jimmy didn't play very well. They were 1 for 10 on third down. It was just abysmal. Early on that game, in Chicago, it was kind of messy. The monsoon, it's kind of, that one's hard to judge, but the last couple of weeks, it's just been something as simple as, like, you have those drop balls, like that ball that McLeod dropped, that ball that Charlie Warner dropped. You start getting bad penalties, that you get behind the sticks, and you're having to throw on third and long over and over again. So I just think it's been a lack of consistency, and I don't think that it's something where you can just say, like, oh, they didn't have training camp with Jimmy, so they're rusty. Like, they've been playing together for 5 years.
No
these
doubt.
guys. So it's just something that they need to figure out, because right now they've just been painfully average on offense. Like, they're 18th in yardage, they're 15th in third down conversion rate, they're 17th in yards per drive, they're 22nd in yards per drive, or points per drive, sorry. So it's like, with a defense as good as they have, that's been able to translate to them at least winning half their games and staying in first place in the division. But you can't be just mediocre on offense and expect to get anywhere, especially when you have the skill position players they have and somebody drawing the plays the way Kyle has. And while the execution does fall on the players, I think as the head coach, Kyle does hold his share of responsibility for them not executing. And at this point, results are the only thing that's going to change that. They can say whatever they want during pressers and, during the week and talk about what they're doing during practice. But if the results aren't showing up on Sundays, ultimately he's the one who's responsible for it, being the head coach who's kind of overseeing all of this.
Jordan Elliott, staff writer at Niners Nation, doing a hell of a job here on the Morning Roast. We love him on the roast as he breaks down the Niners. At @Splash_cousin on Twitter. Check his workout. He's one of the best in the business when it comes to breaking down 49ers football. And, I wanted to get there because the points per game bothers me. When you look at the second half, you take away the Carolina game, 16 second half points produced by the offense. And you got an offensive guy as head coach. You've got all these playmakers here. And it just seems like there is a lack of urgency. Is that on Kyle? Is that on the quarterback? Is that on the players? How do you see it, Jordan?
So I think the game last week was very interesting because I know the drive that everybody that really got people upset, and I understand why, was that like 8-minute drive where they were down 2 scores in the fourth quarter and they spend, almost 10 minutes and they get nothing out of it. Mm-hmm. And Kyle in his presser was basically saying that, I thought we only had a couple possessions left and I wanted to maximize the, possessions we had. So I could understand, kind of going into a huddle and making sure that you're running things in a comfortable manner and not scrambling and having guys in a hurry-up setting where they, things aren't as coordinated. But the problem with that is if you are going to do that, you have to come away with points. If you're going to have that methodical, taking 8 minutes off the clock when you can't afford to be wasting any time, you can't get into the other team's territory and then fail to convert a fourth down, on their end of the field and then basically take yourself out of the football game. So I agree. I just didn't understand why. I understand huddling, but I didn't understand. It was almost as if they were the ones playing with the 14-point lead. And, even just the way they were breaking the huddle and getting to the line of scrimmage, it didn't feel like there was the sense of urgency that needed to be there. And again, like I'm as big of a believer in Kyle Shanahan as anybody you'll find, but that's an area where, again, I think it falls on him. And you need to have that sense of urgency. You need to be sitting there yelling, running, screaming up the sideline, getting your guys amped up, because that's something, we're talking about Harbaugh a little bit ago. That's something I would have seen Jim Harbaugh do, and he would have been out there picking up the ball and running it to the line of scrimmage himself, So I think that it's something that they definitely need to work on. I do think also that those numbers, in the games that they have won, sometimes it can be heavily weighted based on the fact that they are just trying to run a clock, and you start getting these drives where they're just, running 3 times and punting because they have a decent lead like they have in a couple games. But the overall sample hasn't been great to start the year. I agree. There definitely needs to be more efficiency in that second half of football.
We know that there's injuries galore. I mean, just all over the board. Who's the guy that when you watch the film, you think they missed the most?
It's really hard. It's either Trent Williams or Nick Bosa, but I actually think the offensive line has been really good in Trent Williams' absence, considering how special he is. And I think that Jalen Moore last week stepped up in a big way, and he was really good against one of the better edge rushers in the league, and Brian Burns, when they played the Panthers. To me, it's Nick Bosa, because as good as the defensive line is behind him, the way that he alters, games is second to none, honestly, among defensive players in the NFL right now. His 22% pressure rate leads the NFL. He has 25% pressure rate in true pass sets. So when, it's third and long and teams are dropping back, he's getting there a quarter of the time, which is just absurd. I think Micah Parsons is probably, neck and neck with him for Defensive Player of the Year right now. He's been very special for the Cowboys. Parsons is only at 16.9%. Bosa's at 22%. So the way he's able to not only get there and affect plays when he's getting home with pressure, but also the way that teams have to account for him, and they have to send doubles, and they have to shift protection his way. They can only send out 4 because they have to keep the running back in to pass protect. It opened things up for everybody else as well, and I think that he's just such a special talent that as good as the depth is behind him, and I think they've been really special there as well. I wanted to give a quick shout-out to Charles Menahue and Samson Ebukam, who both are over 13% with their pressure rate as well. 49ers are the only team in the league who have 3 players over 13%,
wow,
minimum of 100 pass rushing snaps. But Bosa's just, he should be the Defensive Player of the Year if he's able to stay healthy and America's team propaganda doesn't, overpower the voting when the season ends if Parsons is right there with him, because he is just so special. So I would say Nick Bosa, but it's very close with him and Trent Williams.
Lastly, before we let you go, how did the Niners win this game? Do they beat the Chiefs this Sunday? I think if they're healthy, they match up very well against this version of the Kansas City Chiefs, but health is in question. So, and we also know how Andy Reid and Mahomes respond to losses. They usually back them up with big-time wins. You see the Niners winning this Sunday?
I think they do, and it's something as simple as just the 49ers, whenever they have just an abysmal showing, they've done a really good job rebounding, and it's something that it's become a pattern in recent years, and I think there is that sense of urgency when they do play the way they did in Atlanta. Again, I'm with you, Vontae. I know that it does kind of hinge on health, and I'll probably wait until Friday to feel a lot more confident about that based on who's going to be active and who's not, doubtful for this game, but I just think they find a way to pressure Mahomes. I think they find a way to control the clock a little bit better, move the ball a little bit better. Kansas City's defense is a respectable unit, but they have had some trouble allowing yards after the catch. So I think this is probably the week we see Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and those guys really rack up some big gains on a quick slant, those shallow crossers, some screens. So I do think the 49ers find a way to win this game, and I think they find a way to get back over 500 and stay in first place in the NFC West.
Jordan Elliott, you're the man. Staff writer at Niners Nation, does a great job breaking down the 49ers at @splash_cousin.
Stats.
He always crushes his appearances on the Morning Roast. We'll do it again soon, my friend.
Thank you guys so much. Always a pleasure.
Anytime,
Killing
Jordan Elliott.